You wake up, the coffee maker is gurgling, you smell the toast browning in the kitchen.
A completely normal morning.
Exactly. You check the weather on your phone, you step out the door, there is this invisible, very comforting architecture to an ordinary Tuesday.
Right, and we all rely on it just to get by.
We do. We expect gravity to hold us down. We expect time to march straight forward. And, we expect that when we look in the bathroom mirror, it's our own face staring back at us.
Yeah, that's a pretty basic assumption we all make.
I mean, we navigate our entire lives operating on the assumption that reality has firm, non-negotiable borders.
Well, and it is a biological necessity to believe in those borders, honestly.
How do you mean?
The human brain is essentially a prediction machine. It constantly maps out the environment based on known physics and social norms, mostly just to conserve energy.
Right, so we don't have to think about every little thing.
Exactly. If we had to constantly wonder whether a chair was going to suddenly turn into vapor or if the person walking down the street was actually a ghost, our nervous systems would just completely collapse under the computational weight.
We'd short circuit.
We need that predictable architecture to function at a basic level.
But then you step into the world we're exploring today, and that neat little architecture doesn't just crack. I mean, it completely shatters.
It really does.
So what do you do when the unexplainable or the supernatural or the downright extraterrestrial crashes right into your kitchen?
That is the million-dollar question.
How do you keep your sanity, cook dinner, and stay spiritually grounded when the fabric of reality tears open in your own backyard?
Because the default human reaction to the paranormal usually falls into one of two terrible extremes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's either absolute paralyzing terror where you hide under the bed, or it's complete fanatical obsession where you build a shrine in your living room and wait for the mothership.
And obviously, neither of those extremes is conducive to mental health or holding down a functional life.
Not at all. Which brings us to the core mission of today's deep dive. We are examining a fascinating, deeply personal stack of source materials.
Some really incredible stuff in here.
It is wild. We have personal journals and essays written by an individual. This is a parent living a thoroughly ordinary life in Indiana who experiences phenomena that would send most people straight to a psychiatric hold.
Oh, without a doubt.
We also have physical evidence they've provided, which we'll get into, including some profoundly unsettling sketches drawn by a 5-year-old child.
Those sketches are really something else.
They gave me chills, honestly. And crucial to understanding this person's mind, we have extensive theological excerpts from a massive, highly complex 20th century text known as the Urantia book.
Right, which plays a huge role in all of this.
You're going to dig deeply into what the Urantia book actually is in a moment because it is, frankly, wild.
It is a dense piece of literature, yeah.
But our goal here is to use these sources to extract a blueprint. We are looking at how this specific author manages to remain completely sane, incredibly healthy, and entirely focused on mindful spiritual living, even when bizarre paranormal events occur on a regular basis.
Which is the most surprising part of the whole narrative.
Exactly. They are running around with EMF meters trying to monetarily capitalize on ghosts, They're going to college classes, raising kids, and just dealing with it. Okay, let's unpack this.
What's fascinating here is the author demonstrates a complete refusal to surrender to fear or mysticism.
Yeah, they really push back against it.
When you analyze their personal accounts, the most shocking element isn't the UFOs or the precognitive dreams. It is the distinct lack of panic.
They stay so calm.
They never view these experiences as a reason to abandon logic or to declare themselves some sort of chosen prophet. Instead, they use these bizarre interruptions to reinforce a very practical, everyday framework they refer to as a friendship with God.
A friendship with God. I mean, it sounds like a bumper sticker, right? Very cozy and safe.
It does sound a bit cliche at first.
But when you apply that concept to surviving an alien home invasion, it takes on a staggering psychological weight. It acts like a hack for human resilience.
It's an incredibly powerful coping mechanism.
So we are going to look at the boundaries they set, the prophetic dreams they navigate, the waking ghosts they encounter, the traumatic extraterrestrial events involving their child, and the massive cosmic worldview that holds it all together.
And we will view all of this through the lens of mental and spiritual health.
Right.
Because regardless of what you, the listener, believe about the objective reality of the paranormal, the psychological survival mechanisms documented in these journals are a masterclass in maintaining cognitive stability under extreme stress.
A total masterclass. Let's start with the foundation of that stability, which is setting rules. If
Right.
you are going to survive the weird, you cannot be a passive participant.
You have to be active.
Right. The author establishes this foundational rule for sanity right out of the gate in their essay. They talk about a friend of theirs.
Yes, the story about the friend is very telling.
This friend claims that he cannot get a full night's sleep because spirit beings physically hit him in the middle of the night.
Just repeatedly waking him up.
Yeah, they supposedly strike him to wake him up so he can perform service work or prayer in the dark.
Now, notice the author's reaction to this friend's story. Many people immersed in spiritual or paranormal communities would treat that friend with reverence, right?
Well, for sure. They'd ask them for guidance, assuming they have some special, deep connection to the other side.
Exactly. The author, however, flatly calls this situation, and I quote from the text, ridiculous.
Just a total dismissal. Ridiculous.
They are entirely rejecting the idea that we should let the paranormal bully us in our own homes.
I love that. They're just not having it.
This points to a profound psychological boundary rooted in the concept of locus of control.
Locus of control. Okay, break that down for us.
Well, in psychology, if you have an external locus of control, you believe things happen to you by outside forces.
Like you're just a victim of circumstance.
Right. But if you have an internal locus of control, you believe you have agency over your life. You are in the driver's seat.
Got it.
The author is fiercely defending their internal locus of control. They state clearly that we are free will creatures.
Free will creatures.
In their worldview, even if the universe is teeming with spirits, entities, or unexplainable phenomena, those things do not get to dictate the terms of our physical or mental existence.
They don't get to run the show.
Exactly. The author believes we hold the ultimate authority over our own religious and spiritual practices, our prayer, our meditation, our service to others.
It's like setting up a spam filter for your soul.
A spam filter, I like that.
You acknowledge that the weird messages exist, that they are out there pinging your inbox, but you don't let them rewrite your operating system.
You don't click the sketchy links.
Right. You don't let them wake you up at 3 a.m., you set the permissions. But I have to push back on the author's premise here just a bit.
Okay, what's the pushback?
It sounds great in theory, you know. I am a free will creature. But if a literal ghost is standing in your kitchen, or a spirit is physically striking your arm, how do you actually enforce a boundary against something that doesn't obey the laws of physics?
It's a fair question.
I mean, you can't put a restraining order on a poltergeist.
No, you can't. You enforce the boundary through your reaction.
Your reaction.
To understand how the author manages this, we have to bring in the theological grounding they pull from the Urantia book.
Okay, let's get into it. For those unfamiliar, tell us what this book is.
The Urantia book is a massive 2,000-plus page spiritual and philosophical text published in the 1950s.
It is a brick of a book.
It really is. It claims to be a revelation to humanity, covering everything from the origin of the cosmos and the nature of God to a highly detailed alternative history of Jesus.
It covers a lot of ground.
It is incredibly dense and complex, but the excerpts the author highlights focus intensely on defining what true religion actually is.
And what does it say?
According to this text, true religion is absolutely not about wild, indescribable ecstasy. It is not about mystical trances, morbid visions, or being beaten up by angels in the night.
I have the text right here, actually. It says, religion is a mode of reacting to the situations of life. It calls it a species of conduct.
A species of conduct. It strips away all the melodrama. It makes spirituality intensely practical. It's about behavior, not sensory thrills.
Action over feeling.
Exactly. The author applies this exact logic to the paranormal. By declaring a willingness to serve humanity and God, but explicitly refusing to obsess over the why or the how of a paranormal event, they neutralize the terror.
That makes a lot of sense.
The author writes, his purpose is not always understood. That's okay.
That's okay.
That simple phrase, that's okay, is the boundary line. It is a conscious, active decision to tolerate extreme ambiguity without letting it destroy their peace of mind.
So if a spirit hits you in the night, you don't drop to your knees in awe. You say, excuse me, I need my 8 hours of sleep to be a functional, loving parent tomorrow. So kindly back off.
Precisely. They are taking the mundane laws of self-care and aggressively applying them to the supernatural.
I love that. Self-care for ghost encounters.
It is a brilliant safeguard against fanaticism. The text warns repeatedly that fanaticism occurs when a person believes that every odd experience is a direct, undeniable mandate from the divine that overrides all earthly logic.
Right, like the ghost told me to quit my job and move to the desert.
Exactly. Fanatics lose their common sense. The author avoids this by keeping common sense permanently in the driver's seat. They acknowledge their reality is expanding, but they refuse to let go of the steering wheel.
They are essentially saying, I will be a spiritual person, but I will do it on my own terms, in my own time.
And that is exactly what keeps them sane.
But it's one thing to enforce those boundaries when you're awake, making conscious choices while drinking your morning coffee. What happens when your conscious mind shuts off?
Ah, right. The dreamscape.
Does the spam filter for the soul still work when you're asleep? Because the source material takes us deep into the author's dreamscape, and things get very complicated.
They really do. This is where we see a fascinating tension between the author's lived, undeniable personal experiences and the strict teachings of the theological texts they rely on for their sanity.
Yeah, let's talk about that. The author documents a series of lucid dreams, and we need to be clear about what kind of dreams we are talking about here.
These are not standard anxiety dreams.
No, these aren't vague, symbolic dreams where your teeth fall out because you're stressed about a presentation at work. These are highly specific, actionable, precognitive warnings.
Yeah.
The first major one they detail is the Axeman dream.
The author describes a lucid dream, meaning they were consciously aware they were dreaming while asleep, where a man is attacking with an axe.
Terrifying.
It's visceral, terrifying, and carries a heavy, lingering sense of dread upon waking.
So 6 months pass. The dream is just a bad memory at this point, but then it bleeds into waking reality.
In a horrible way.
An escaped mental patient attacks 3 teenage boys who were camping in the nearby area. He attacks them with an axe. Only one of the boys survives.
It's just an awful tragedy.
And the author later realizes a horrifying connection. They had previously met the grandmother of one of the murdered boys at a neighborhood gathering, even though they didn't know the boys personally. The proximity is chilling.
It really is. But look at the author's behavior in the aftermath.
Right, how do they react?
They do not claim to be a psychic detective. They don't run to the police claiming they can solve crimes with their mind.
Which a lot of people might try to do in that situation.
Exactly. They acknowledge there was absolutely nothing they could have done to prevent the tragedy.
Yeah.
However, they took the residual feeling from the dreams seriously enough before the event to warn their friends to be extra cautious and to lock their doors, simply stating they had a bad feeling about an Axeman.
They took a practical physical safety measure based entirely on a paranormal warning.
A very grounded response to something unexplainable.
And this isn't an isolated incident. The pattern repeats with a second dream they call the drowning. The author dreams that a small girl drowns in the lake right next to their house.
And again, we see an immediate, grounded response.
What do?
The author doesn't hold a seance or try to bless the water. They institute a strict, non-negotiable family rule. No grandchildren are allowed near the water's edge, period.
They set a physical boundary to counteract a psychic threat.
Exactly.
And years later, the author learns the terrifying historical context of that spot. A little girl actually had drowned in that exact location in the past.
The dream was historically, or perhaps precognitively, accurate.
It's so eerie. And then there is the third, most personal example, the car crash.
This one hits very close to home for them.
The author dreams of a terrible accident occurring in their specific vehicle. It is a violent impact, so severe that the author physically experiences blacking out within the dream itself.
Just incredibly vivid and traumatic.
Sometime after this dream, the author's son ends up purchasing that exact car from them. And the inevitable happens. He gets into a horrific accident.
Oh.
The car is completely totaled, and the son is taken to the hospital unconscious. The details of the dream map perfectly onto the future reality.
So we are looking at 3 instances of highly specific precognition.
Yeah, undeniable patterns.
But here is the massive cognitive dissonance the author has to navigate. They are deeply devoted to the Urantia book. Yet the excerpts provided from that very book offer a severe, almost aggressive condemnation of overinterpreting dreams.
Oh man, I was reading through the text excerpts and it practically yells at the reader.
It really does not mince words.
It explicitly states that ordinary dreams are purely physiologic and psychologic phenomena. It calls them disordered and garbled.
Disordered and garbled, yes.
It describes dreams as a disconnected parade of the uncoordinated sleeping mind.
Uncoordinated sleeping mind.
The book goes so far as to say that the grotesque nature of dreams is adequate proof of the failure of the mind to harmonize its divergent factors.
The text is systematically trying to strip all mysticism away from the sleep cycle. It argues that early humans invented the concepts of ghosts and the soul because they couldn't understand their fantastic and variegated dream life.
So it's very skeptical.
The book is essentially telling its readers, look, dreams are biological static. They are your brain taking out the trash. Stop looking for divine revelation in them.
Which puts the author in an impossible position.
A huge contradiction.
Imagine you are the listener reading this text. The foundational book you rely on for your worldview says dreams are biological garbage, but you are actively saving your grandchildren from drowning and watching your son get pulled from a wrecked car, all based on precognitive dreams.
It's a real crisis of faith, potentially.
How on earth do you reconcile a holy book that says ignore your dreams with the reality where your dreams are predicting axe murderers?
This reconciliation is the crux of the author's survival mechanism. It is a brilliant display of cognitive flexibility.
How do they do it?
Instead of throwing out the book or denying their own reality, the author creates a nuanced categorization system.
Oh, clever.
They synthesize the opposing forces by distinguishing between normal garbled dreams, which they fully accept are exactly what the text describes, just subconscious processing, and exceptional lucid dreams.
Ah, so they carve out a very specific exception to the rule.
They do. They note that in these exceptional lucid dreams, a purpose or a task is clearly and undeniably understood.
It's not just a messy parade of images.
Right. They provide another brief example where they dreamed someone was ill and needed to be rushed to the hospital, which immediately turned out to be true.
Wow.
But here is the mechanism that preserves their sanity. Even with these exceptional, undeniably prophetic dreams, they refuse to build a mythology around themselves.
They don't declare themselves the prophet of the lake or start charging for psychic readings.
Exactly. The Urantia text warns that when human beings experience new gleams of truth, it often blinds them, precipitating a convulsion of fanaticism that results disastrously.
A convulsion of fanaticism, what a phrase.
The author actively dodges this disaster by focusing 100% on practical application.
Just sticking to the real world.
You have a dream about a drowning, you keep the kids away from the water, you dream about a car crash, you tell your son to drive carefully.
Right.
They treat paranormal precognition the same way you or I would treat a severe weather alert on our phones. You hear a tornado is coming, you go to the basement. You don't build a religion around the weatherman.
That distinction is everything. It's the difference between utilizing unexplainable information and being consumed by it.
Perfectly said.
They validate their own lived experience, they trust what they saw, but they use the profound skepticism of the text as a heavy anchor to keep from floating away into delusion. It's an incredible mental balancing act.
It really is impressive.
But we have to acknowledge a terrifying escalation in the source material.
Things do get much more intense.
Because, you can wake up from a dream. The Axeman vanishes when you open your eyes and see the morning light. What happens when the vision happens while you are wide awake, standing in your own house?
That is when the psychological barrier between the subconscious and the conscious mind just completely dissolves.
And that's exactly what happens next. The author documents multiple experiences where the veil between the living and the dead seems to drop in broad daylight, demanding an immediate, real-world response.
It's no longer just a warning feeling. It's right in front of them.
Let's put you, the listener, in this exact scenario. It is morning. You are doing the most mundane, repetitive task imaginable, brushing your teeth.
Just getting ready for the day.
You are looking absent-mindedly into the bathroom mirror. But instead of your own reflection staring back at you with a toothbrush in your mouth, the mirror is completely filled with the image of your mother-in-law.
And it is not just a standard image of her smiling or anything normal.
No.
Mother-in-law is laid out, motionless, wearing her grave clothes.
Unbelievable.
The author specifies these were the exact clothes the woman had previously shown the family, setting them aside for her eventual burial.
So you are standing in your bathroom, foaming at the mouth with toothpaste, and you see a dead relative in a coffin staring back at you from the glass.
It's like something out of a horror movie.
I think the vast majority of people would drop the toothbrush, scream until their lungs gave out, and immediately put the house on the market.
The sheer horror of that intrusion into a safe space is unthinkable. The psychological shock would be immense, triggering a massive fight-or-flight response.
Absolutely. But observe the author's immediate, almost clinical reaction. They don't panic. They don't assume the house is demonic.
It's irrational.
They possess a crucial piece of reality testing information. They know their mother-in-law is currently alive.
Right, she's not dead yet.
Therefore, they interpret the vision of her in grave clothes not as a haunting, but as an urgent, severe medical warning.
A very logical leap, under the circumstances.
The author spits out the toothpaste, picks up the phone, and calls her to check in.
Just a simple phone call.
And the mother-in-law answers. She says she feels a little weird, maybe a bit off, but she hasn't bothered to call a doctor because it doesn't seem like an emergency.
Typical response, yeah.
But the author, driven by the horrifying weight of what they just saw in the mirror, absolutely insists she get a well check immediately. They do not let it go. They push the issue until the mother-in-law agrees.
And that insistence, driven entirely by a paranormal vision, literally saves the woman's life.
It really does.
The mother-in-law goes to the hospital and is diagnosed with acute kidney failure. The attending physician explicitly states that she would not have lived more than another 24 hours.
Wow, 24 hours.
Furthermore, during the admission, they discover her regular doctor had prescribed conflicting medications that were causing the crisis. She is treated and ends up living for many more years.
The author notes in their journal that they felt foolish at the time for insisting so strongly. They risked social awkwardness and family friction because they had a gut feeling they had to follow through.
It takes a lot of conviction to do that.
Again, we see this incredible translation of paranormal terror into intensely mundane practical action. See a ghost in the mirror. Call the primary care physician and schedule a blood test.
It is the ultimate demystification of the supernatural. They strip the ghost of its spooky power and turn it into a medical alert bracelet.
A medical alert bracelet, I love that analogy.
And we see this exact same procedural logic in the second waking vision they describe, the Ice Walker.
Oh, this story gave me genuine chills. The author is rushing out of their house, running late for a college class.
Just rushing through a busy day.
They look out into their yard and see a man walking past. He looks completely corporeal, completely normal. He is wearing a beige hooded jacket.
Nothing particularly scary about him.
But he's heading straight toward the lake, and the author knows the weather has been unseasonably warm. The ice is rotting. It is absolutely not safe to walk on.
So she recognizes a mundane danger.
The author, acting as a concerned neighbor, calls out to him, warning him to stop. He completely ignores her. She calls out a second time, louder.
And still, no reaction.
He continues to ignore her, walking steadily toward the treacherous ice. Because she is late for her class and he is an adult making his own choices, she leaves, though she worries about him.
You can't force someone to listen, right?
Later that day, she checks the lake and sees no one, assuming he made it across or turned back.
Right.
A couple of days later, the author is watching the local evening news. A segment comes on about a man reported missing from a nearby town. He'd left a bar late at night and simply vanished.
Oh, no.
The news broadcasts his picture, and the author's blood runs cold. It is the exact same man she saw in her yard. He is wearing the exact same beige hooded jacket.
The exact same guy.
But the news anchor states he has been missing for 2 weeks.
The timeline is impossible.
Right. The author is certain it was him in her yard 2 days ago. So what is her response to encountering a ghost in broad daylight?
Again, she doesn't panic.
She doesn't call a priest to perform an exorcism on the lawn. She doesn't smudge the house with sage. She picks up the phone and calls the county sheriff's tip line.
Just incredibly pragmatic.
She gives an official statement to the police. She tells them she saw him 2 days earlier, heading for the ice on her lake.
And the police, lacking any other leads, take the tip seriously.
They actually listen to her.
The sheriff's department deploys a rescue dive team to search the freezing waters of the author's lake. They scour the area but find nothing.
So the tip was a bust.
Well, no. This paranormal tip fundamentally changes the trajectory of the police investigation. The idea of searching the water prompts the authorities to search a different lake entirely, one located near the bar where the man was last seen 2 weeks prior.
Oh, wow.
And that is where they find his body.
Incredible.
The investigation concludes he had stumbled onto the ice near the bar, fallen through, and drowned or frozen to death the very same night he went missing.
He had been dead for 2 weeks when the author saw him, clear as day, walking through her yard in that beige jacket.
It's a haunting realization. But the author reflects on this with a profound, grounded empathy. She notes it wasn't a happy ending, she couldn't save him, but the investigation gave the grieving family closure.
Yeah, she helped them find him.
She writes simply, "I thought I had seen a living person, but it seems I saw a vision of someone that was already dead."
I want to highlight something incredible from the sources here. Going back to the Urantia book, here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, what is it?
When you look at the text provided, There's an extensive section analyzing the life, personality, and psychological profile of Jesus. The text goes out of its way to stress repeatedly that Jesus did not pose as a mild, sweet, gentle, and kindly mystic.
Which goes against a lot of popular interpretation.
Right. It argues that his teaching was thrillingly dynamic. He wasn't sitting on a rock contemplating the ether. He went about actively, physically doing good in the community.
The text is highly critical of the concept of passive, isolated meditation as the peak of spiritual achievement. It elevates active, practical engagement with the suffering of the real world above all mystical experiences.
The author is channeling this exact dynamic energy. Their response to the paranormal is entirely rooted in active goodness. See a ghost. Call the police tip line to help a grieving family find a body. See an omen of death. Call the doctor to prevent kidney failure. It's like they've deputized themselves into a supernatural neighborhood watch.
Supernatural neighborhood watch, that's brilliant.
They aren't trying to understand the quantum physics of how a ghost appears. They are just trying to figure out how the appearance of the ghost can help them serve their community.
This approach forces us to redefine sanity itself, I think. We typically define sanity as having an accurate, consensus-based perception of reality.
Right, seeing what everyone else sees.
But what if reality is objectively larger and stranger than the consensus allows? The author's approach suggests that sanity isn't about perfectly understanding everything you see. It is entirely about how you behave in response to it.
Behavior is key.
By refusing the paralysis of fanaticism and clinging fiercely to practical service, the author maintains profound psychological stability in a very unstable environment.
They anchor the unexplainable floating balloon of the paranormal to the undeniable heavy rock of caring for other people. It's a beautiful defense mechanism.
It's very grounding.
But, it's relatively easy to be brave and clinical when you're an adult, with a fully developed prefrontal cortex, strong boundaries, and established coping mechanisms.
True. Adults have tools children just don't possess.
Right. And the ultimate test of spiritual sanity, the crucible that can break almost any human mind, is when the unexplainable phenomenon bypasses you and directly targets your family, specifically your vulnerable children.
Yes, this is where the narrative shifts significantly.
This brings us to the most deeply unsettling part of the deep dive. We're leaving the realm of ghosts and precognitive dreams and entering something entirely different, something that feels intensely predatory.
We are entering the territory of the extraterrestrial. Or, more accurately, we are exploring the perception of an extraterrestrial event as it is violently filtered through the developing mind of a traumatized child.
This part is tough. The author details an event that occurred when their son was almost 5 years old. It's a week before Easter.
A very happy time for a kid.
Usually, yeah. The house is filled with happy holiday traditions. The author is cooking breakfast in the kitchen. The atmosphere is warm and safe. Suddenly, the young son comes into the kitchen, crying hysterically.
Just completely beside himself.
He is blinking his eyes uncontrollably, a rapid, frantic tech. And he claims, through his tears, that the Easter Bunny came into the house during the night and scared him.
Now, naturally, the mother's first instinct is the standard, rational parental protocol.
Of course.
De-escalate, comfort, and rationalize. She tells him it's not Easter yet, that he must have just had a vivid nightmare. She's trying to rebuild that predictable architecture of reality for him.
But the child is completely adamant. He gets deeply frustrated that she isn't believing him just because he's little. He emphatically states it was absolutely not a dream, that the Easter Bunny surely came into the house.
He's doubling down.
And then he says something heartbreaking. He says he doesn't want the Easter Bunny to ever come back, and he doesn't want his Easter candy either.
That detail is crucial. For a 5-year-old to preemptively reject candy and a beloved holiday figure indicates a profound level of terror.
Pure terror.
The mother, realizing that her rationalizations aren't working and that something is genuinely wrong, shifts tactics. She asks the boy to describe this Easter Bunny. She even offers an out, asking if maybe it was a shadow or a blow-up toy that looks scary in the dark.
Trying to find a logical explanation. But the boy insists it wasn't a toy. Knowing her son is a highly gifted artist, he had been drawing recognizable figures since he was sitting in a high chair. She asks him to draw a picture of exactly what he saw in the house.
And this is where we turn to the physical, visual evidence provided in our sources.
This is where it gets really dark.
We have 2 distinct sketches drawn by the son. One from when he was 5, drawn immediately after the traumatic event, and a second one drawn when he was 8, revisiting the memory.
I am looking at the source image right now, And I need to paint this picture for you, the listener, because it will make your stomach drop. It is decidedly, undeniably not a bunny.
Not even close.
There are two figures drawn on the page. The main one is sketched in heavy blue ballpoint pen. It depicts a creature peeking around what looks like a doorframe or a wall.
Just lurking there.
The body has this incredibly slender, almost skeletal frame. You can see harsh ridges drawn on its torso, like exposed ribs. It has a long, uncomfortably thin neck supporting a head that is entirely out of proportion.
And the arms are particularly disturbing in their execution. They are spindly, reaching out, and the hand gripping the edge of the wall has long, unnatural, needle-like fingers.
But it's the face that locks you in. The head is completely hairless, bulbous, and wide at the top, tapering drastically down to a narrow, pointed chin.
No defining human features.
There's no nose, just a faint suggestion of a vertical ridge. The mouth is a tiny, tight, emotionless slit, and taking up almost half the face are these massive, slanted, solid, black, almond-shaped eyes.
It's a very specific look.
Off to the right side of the page, drawn in lighter pencil, is a second sketch of a similar entity, also peeking out from behind a vertical structure, perhaps a tree or another doorway. The biological features are identical. Large head, huge dark eyes, tiny mouth, thin neck.
It is the textbook, undeniable pop culture definition of a gray alien.
Drawn by a 5-year-old child in the rural Midwest who, according to the author's strict monitoring, had absolutely zero exposure to alien media, sci-fi movies, or UFO magazines.
That lack of prior exposure is key here. If we look at this through the lens of developmental psychology and trauma, we are witnessing a fascinating, albeit horrifying, defense mechanism known as schema mapping.
Schema mapping. Okay, explain that.
A schema is a cognitive framework that helps us organize and interpret information. When a child encounters something completely new, they try to fit it into an existing schema.
Like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Exactly. This child experienced an intrusion by an entity that his brain literally did not have the vocabulary, the conceptual framework, or the schema to process. He had never seen a gray alien. He didn't know the word extraterrestrial.
So his brain scrambled frantically for the closest known entity in his mental filing cabinet. An intruder in the house at night. Sneaking around right before Easter, it has to be the Easter Bunny.
Precisely. The child's mind takes the label of a mythical, safe holiday visitor and desperately pastes it onto a terrifying alien reality in an attempt to categorize and cope with the sheer horror of the encounter.
It's his brain's way of protecting him.
Yes, but slapping a safe label on a trauma doesn't erase the trauma. The author notes that the child's uncontrollable blinking tig persisted for a very long time after the event.
The blinking was so severe and persistent that the family pediatrician eventually recommended professional trauma counseling.
So what did the counselor say?
The counselor questioned the boy extensively, trying to find a mundane root for the anxiety, but ultimately told the mother there was no psychological way to tell what really happened in that house. But the boy wholly believed it happened, and his nervous system was reacting as if he had survived a major threat.
And the definitive proof that this wasn't just a garbled nightmare about a rabbit came years later.
Yeah, oh man, yeah. The author mentions a moment when the family finally sat down to watch Steven Spielberg's film Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Classic.
The boy is older now, but the moment the gray aliens appear on the television screen, the boy bursts into hysterical tears, runs terrified to his bedroom, and shouts, "It's the Easter Bunny!"
Wow. That is the smoking gun of schema mapping right there.
Just undeniable.
The visual trigger of the gray alien on the screen violently ripped away the Easter Bunny label, bringing the raw memory of the 5-year-old's encounter rushing back.
It's incredibly dark. And as the child got older, he was able to articulate more details about the night. He explained that the Easter Bunny was standing directly in the doorway to the kitchen, physically blocking his path to his mother's bedroom.
So he was trapped.
That's why he had to run and hide in his older sister's room instead. He also mentioned looking out his window and seeing police cars in the trees outside his window with bright lights flashing.
Again, we see the mapping. A 5-year-old knows that flashing lights at night mean police cars. He had seen an arrest across the street previously. He mapped that known concept onto the unknown reality of brightly lit crafts hovering near the tree line of his property.
So let's step back and look at the whole picture. We have a deeply traumatized child, a terrifyingly accurate drawing of a gray alien, a narrative of a physical home invasion, and crafts hovering in the trees.
It is an overwhelming amount of high strangeness.
If you are the parent in this situation, this is the breaking point. This is where sanity usually fractures. This is where you call the National Enquirer, or you buy a shotgun and barricade the doors, or you completely lose your grip on reality.
It would push anyone to the edge.
But instead of breaking, the author details a physical aftermath that takes the story to an entirely new level of bizarre.
Oh, this part is wild. Shortly after her son reported the incident and began the uncontrollable blinking, the author documents a physical manifestation on her own body. She developed a strange, hard lump in her upper arm.
It wasn't just a lump, it was active. She describes it as bothering her incessantly. She said she could swear it was itching from the inside, almost as if it were moving or vibrating under her skin.
That sounds agonizing.
After about 2 weeks of this maddening, inexplicable sensation, she takes matters into her own hands. She bypasses doctors entirely. She starts to scratch and dig at the lump, tearing into her own arm until she physically pops something out.
She describes extracting a 3/8-inch hard white plastic ball from her flesh.
From her own arm.
Yes. Yeah. She compares its appearance to one of those small scent balls you drop into a vacuum cleaner bag. Her arm is bleeding. She is holding an impossible object extracted from her own body.
Okay, hold on. I have to stop here. If I dig a hard plastic sphere out of my arm 2 weeks after my kid draws an alien home invader, I am putting that sphere in a sterile glass jar.
Without a doubt.
I am driving to the Mayo Clinic. I am demanding an X-ray, a chemical analysis, and a press conference. I want proof.
Any rational person would want answers.
But what does the author do with this impossible bleeding piece of physical evidence? She flushes it down the toilet.
Which, to an outside observer, seems like the most irrational act possible. Why destroy the ultimate proof?
Exactly. Why flush it? It defies all human curiosity. How do you not lose your mind right there?
You have to look at her hierarchy of needs in that exact moment. Her reaction is entirely driven by a fierce, protective maternal instinct.
Protect the kids at all costs.
She doesn't have the luxury of being a scientific marvel. She doesn't want to be a professional abductee or a victim. She has to be a mother protecting her territory.
Right. She's not looking for fame.
She flushed it because she had the sudden, profound intuition that the object was a tracking device. She believed it was transmitting her exact location, and by extension, the location of her vulnerable children, to whatever had terrified her son.
She writes, I wasn't about to let that continue. Flushing it is an act of supreme defiance.
Oh, it really is.
It is violently reasserting the boundary we talked about back in the beginning. I am a free will creature. You do not have my permission to track me. Down the sewer you go.
Instead of descending into a paranoid spiral where she feels constantly monitored, she leans into immediate practical action to sever the connection.
And eventually, after her divorce, she takes the ultimate practical step. She moves the family completely out of that house and away from that property.
Sometimes you just have to leave.
And as time passes, she contextualizes the whole terrifying ordeal by constructing a very specific rationalizing theory. She asks the fundamental question, why us? Why would advanced beings from another planet care about my kids in rural Indiana?
It's a natural question to ask after all that.
And she lands on a biological theory, DNA. She notes in her journals that her children all ranked in the top 5% nationally for academic aptitude and comprehension, and that her son was obviously a highly gifted artist.
Right.
She theorizes that perhaps there is a cosmic backup plan in motion. If humanity is facing a man-made disaster, maybe these extraterrestrials have a genetic interest in monitoring or preserving highly capable human DNA.
Now, it is crucial to understand that it does not matter if her DNA theory is scientifically accurate or objectively true.
No, not at all.
What matters is the psychological function the theory serves. By theorizing about genetic aptitude and cosmic backup plans, she takes a completely chaotic, deeply violating trauma, monsters terrifying her son, implants in her arm, and encases it in a rational, orderly, almost bureaucratic framework.
She puts it in a neat little box.
She mentally transforms her children from helpless, random victims of night terrors into valuable, recognized assets of a larger cosmic project. It is a brilliant subconscious strategy to process severe trauma and maintain functional, everyday sanity.
She builds a bridge of logic over a canyon of absolute madness so she can walk across it and go make breakfast.
Exactly.
But this intensely local, highly personal encounter suddenly blows the doors off the scope of our deep dive.
The scope definitely widens here.
If these beings are here, checking on our DNA, hovering in our trees, leaving plastic spheres in our arms, what are they flying in?
Yeah.
And what exactly is the larger cosmic plan they are executing? Which brings us to the daylight UAPs and the cosmic context.
Up until now, the phenomena have been largely confined to the margins. The night, the dreamscape, the unseen, the shadows of a child's bedroom.
Very covert.
But the author's experiences eventually graduate from the shadows into the blinding light of day.
The author recounts a crystal-clear observation of a massive, unidentified anomalous phenomenon, a UAP. And this isn't a blurry light in the night sky.
No, this is undeniable.
We are talking broad daylight, 11 a.m. on a crisp morning in South Bend, Indiana. She is standing at the front picture window of her house, casually drinking coffee with her husband.
It is the absolute epitome of an ordinary Tuesday morning.
And right there, roughly 200 feet up in the air, maybe just a block or two down the street, she sees it. A dark gray rectangle.
A rectangle.
She provides incredibly specific proportions, 100 feet long, 40 feet wide, and 10 feet thick. This is a massive craft, the size of a commercial building, just silently floating above a residential neighborhood.
The details she records regarding its movement are fascinating from an aeronautical perspective. She describes the craft as proceeding in a controlled, flat spin.
A flat spin, okay.
It wasn't wobbling, darting, or behaving erratically like many UFO reports. It moved with a slow, purposeful, almost arrogant surveillance. There were no lights shining, no apparent windows or seams, and absolutely no visible means of propulsion or levitation.
So no jet engines or anything?
No rotors, no wings, no exhaust trails, just a silent, massive, spinning gray slab reflecting the morning sun.
She stands there and watches it for 7 to 10 seconds before it moves out of sight. Now, again, how does a sane person process seeing a flying building over South Bend while holding a mug of coffee?
Well, she takes her signature grounded approach.
She doesn't panic. She doesn't write a doomsday manifesto. She uses her network. She consults a family member who works professionally in air traffic control in Chicago.
Going straight to the experts.
They advise her that this is out of their jurisdiction and tell her to report it to MUFON.
MUFON being the Mutual UFO Network, one of the oldest and largest civilian UFO investigative organizations in the world.
Right. So she sits down and files an official bureaucratic report. She also consults her brother, who has a background in Air Force intelligence.
She's doing her due diligence.
He confirms he has never seen or heard of a military drone that matches those massive dimensions and flight characteristics.
Notice how she handles the secret government project hypothesis, which is the standard skeptic's explanation for UAPs.
She completely rejects it, and she does it with this incredible civic annoyance.
Civic annoyance, that's a good way to put it.
She writes, "We the people are about tired of all of the government bogus black budget business." She doubts a relatively poor city like South Bend could afford fancy civil defense equipment, and she doesn't believe the military is testing building-sized silent rectangles over suburbs.
She's just annoyed by the whole idea.
She treats this cosmic anomaly with the exact same irritated energy she might reserve for a city pothole that hasn't been fixed.
But encountering a craft of that scale in broad daylight acts as a profound catalyst in her journals. It acts as the bridge that transitions the author from dealing with isolated personal weirdness into embracing a massive, overarching cosmological worldview.
The big picture.
To understand where her mind goes next, we have to unpack the Urantia disclosure.
The author believes, heavily influenced by her reading of the Urantia book, that humanity is currently entering an age of disclosure.
An age of disclosure.
She believes this massive text was deliberately given to humanity as a warning because we are becoming a critical danger to ourselves and to the future viability of our world. She looks at the geopolitical state of the planet and sees an imminent planetary crisis.
She begins to integrate classic apocalyptic imagery into her worldview. She mentions watching the news for signs from the biblical book of Revelation, specifically chapter 11 and the two witnesses.
Heavy stuff.
She highlights a specific prophecy that Rome will suffer a great disaster and the world will mourn its lost beauty. She is actively anticipating dramatic, world-altering, catastrophic events.
Okay, I have to throw the brakes on here.
What's wrong?
We started this deep dive talking about a grounded, sane parent making practical choices. We praised her for avoiding fanaticism.
Right.
But now we are talking about alien tracking devices, massive daylight UAPs, the literal apocalypse, and prophecies concerning the destruction of Rome. To any outside observer, this sounds exactly like the fanaticism the text warned against. Has the author finally cracked? Has the weirdness finally broken her sanity?
It is a vital question to ask.
Yeah.
On the surface, it absolutely looks like a descent into typical apocalyptic obsession.
It really does.
But if you analyze the psychological tone of the text, there is a crucial defining difference between her worldview and true fanaticism.
Okay, what is the difference?
Fanaticism, by its psychological nature, does one of two things. It either paralyzes you with terror or it makes you dangerous to others. Fanatics stockpile weapons, hide in underground bunkers, cut off their families, or try to actively force the end of the world through violence.
But the author isn't exhibiting any of those behaviors. She isn't stockpiling canned goods or building a compound.
Precisely because her cosmic worldview isn't based on terror, it is fundamentally based on hope and divine intervention. She introduces a concept from the Urantia book regarding a divine personage named Melchizedek.
Melchizedek. The text refers to him as the vicegerent planetary prince, which is a heavy title. We need to explain that.
In the Urantia cosmology, planets are administered by a hierarchy of spiritual beings. A planetary prince is essentially the assigned spiritual governor of a world.
Okay.
The text claims our original prince rebelled, isolating Earth, or Urantia, from the rest of the cosmic community. Melchizedek is described as an emergency receiver, a high-level administrator who occasionally incarnates to keep truth alive, supposedly serving as a teacher to Abraham in the Old Testament.
So the author believes this Melchizedek might actually physically return to take over leadership of the planet at any moment to help us out of our current geopolitical and environmental crisis.
Yes, she writes, I am excited to have him help us begin a new era of progress.
She is literally looking forward to getting good advice. It's the most surprisingly optimistic apocalypse I've ever heard of.
It's akin to an employee at a failing, chaotic corporation waiting for a highly competent new CEO to take over. They aren't terrified of the restructuring. They're hopeful the new management will fix the toxic corporate culture.
They just want someone to fix the mess.
She anticipates the end of this planetary rebellion and the lifting of the cosmic quarantine that has kept Earth isolated from the rest of the universe.
And even when she discusses the wildest concepts like methods of planetary escape in the event of total destruction, she maintains this deeply endearing, grounded perspective.
She lists potential methods of escape derived from her studies. Advanced space travel, natural death, which she cheerfully calls the resurrection roll call, or a dematerialization technique where angelic beings called seraphim physically relocate the salvable human population to another world.
Which, as a side note, perfectly connects back to her theory about aliens monitoring DNA for a cosmic backup plan.
Exactly. The puzzle pieces all interlock in her mind. But notice her personal reaction to the idea of being evacuated by angels to another planet. Does she pack her bags and wait on the roof?
No. She writes, I sure hope we don't mess up our beautiful home here and have to move. She actually worries she might be too old to move anyway.
I'm too old for an angelic cosmic relocation. It is a profoundly, hilariously human response to an unimaginable scenario.
It's so relatable.
Her ultimate focus remains fiercely and stubbornly on the present moment on Earth. She hopes the younger generation is tough enough to survive the coming trials, and she's deeply committed to not messing up the planet we already have. Her massive cosmic awareness doesn't detach her from earthly responsibilities, it amplifies her appreciation for them.
Which brings us to the ultimate synthesis, the blueprint we promised at the beginning of the show. How do you fuse a massive, wild, apocalyptic cosmic awareness with the daily practice of making breakfast, paying a mortgage, and loving your neighbors?
The author achieves this synthesis by leaning heavily on the Urantia texts concerning personal religion. These texts argue that the true foundation of religion isn't rigid dogma, ritual, or even a belief in aliens. The foundation is the pursuit of truth, beauty, and goodness.
The text states, goodness embraces the sense of ethics, morality, and religion, experiential perfection hunger. And it sets out the highest possible goal for a human being in this chaotic universe. To become a focus of dynamic affection.
A focus of dynamic affection. It posits that if a person can achieve that state, they essentially become a transmitter, spreading a benign virus of love that can pervade and heal humanity.
A benign virus of love.
This is the ultimate mechanism of how the author survives the paranormal without losing her mind. She makes her religion an action verb. She isn't passively waiting for UFOs to land or for ghosts to explain the afterlife. She is actively, daily, trying to be a vector for love.
There is a beautiful clarifying quote in the sources. Mercy here denotes the height and depth and breadth of the truest friendship, loving kindness. Mercy sometimes may be passive, but here it is active and dynamic, supreme fatherliness.
The author views her relationship with the divine not as a terrified servant blindly doing a duty out of fear of hellfire, but as a willing friend, helping a friend.
That distinction between servant and friend is paramount to psychological survival.
It absolutely is.
The text explicitly states the idea of duty signifies that you are servant-minded and hence are missing the mighty thrill of doing your service as a friend and for a friend.
When you operate as a servant, the unexplainable is terrifying because you don't know the master's master plan. You fear punishment for getting it wrong.
Right, you're always on edge.
But when you operate as a friend, you trust the underlying relationship. Even when the events are baffling, even when there are aliens in the hallway or UFOs in the sky, you trust that the ultimate goal of the universe is benevolent.
So, to summarize the entire thesis of our deep dive today, sanity is not the absence of the weird. Sanity is having a core purpose that the weird cannot touch, alter, or destroy.
That is the perfect takeaway.
If your goal, your absolute non-negotiable daily drive, is to be a good friend to humanity and to God, it simply doesn't matter if you are dealing with a flat tire on your minivan or a flat-spinning UFO over your house. The response is exactly the same. Stay calm, help where you can, and spread the benign virus of love.
My final insight on this, drawn directly from the wisdom of the text, is a reminder that religion is born neither of mystic meditations nor of isolated contemplations.
It's born in the real world.
The author's greatest strength, her ultimate sanity, is that she does not retreat to a mountaintop to ponder the gray aliens. She does not hide from the world. She stays in the mess.
She deals with the trauma of her children. She calls the police to find the missing. She warns her friends about danger. And she tries, as she beautifully puts it, to reduce sympathy for the devil down to zero. She stays engaged in the messy business of being human.
It is a truly remarkable story of resilience.
We've taken an intense journey today. We've gone from the architecture of spiritual boundaries and the refusal of victimhood to precognitive dreams of axemen.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We've seen ghosts staring out of bathroom mirrors and tracked missing persons through waking visions. We've examined the profound, heart-wrenching trauma of the Easter Bunny home invasion, analyzed the chilling psychology behind the sketch of a gray alien, and debated the incredibly human reaction to finding a physical implant in your own arm.
Flushing it down the toilet. Still incredible.
We've looked up at massive daylight UAPs and stared down a potential planetary crisis with a surprising amount of optimism.
And through every single one of those bizarre events, we have seen that the ultimate anchor in a universe that might be far stranger and far more populated than we realize is active spiritual grounding.
A grounding rooted not in fear of the unknown, but in moral will, dynamic goodness, and the revolutionary idea of treating the creator of the universe as a friend.
That is the blueprint.
That is how you survive an ordinary Tuesday when the supernatural decides to crash the party. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with one last thing to mull over as you go about your day.
Food for thought.
We've talked extensively about the author's coping mechanisms and how they maintain their sanity in the face of the unexplainable. But let's flip the perspective for a moment.
Okay, let's flip it.
If the universe really is expanding our consciousness with these bizarre phenomena, if the spirits, the precognition, the aliens, the UAPs are all part of a larger, unfolding, undeniable reality, what if the paranormal isn't a glitch in our matrix?
What if it has a purpose?
What if it's a test? A stress test for humanity to see if we will abandon our logic, our boundaries, and our love for each other in favor of base fear and fanaticism. The next time you are making your morning toast and something completely unexplainable happens in your kitchen, will you lose your head?
Or will you just sweep it up, lock the door, and keep practicing the benign virus of love?
Thank you for exploring the weird with us today. Keep your eyes open, keep your boundaries strong, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.